and I'll freeze the rent for every single rent-stabilized tenant.
These Eric Adams rent hikes are killing us.
Zoran Mamdani got elected to fix New York's housing affordability problems, but it's only gotten worse since he took office. New numbers show the median Manhattan rent has hit a new record high at just over $5,000 a month.
Headlines board member Christina Smith, who represented property owners and was appointed by former Mayor Eric Adams, resigned hours earlier in a LinkedIn post, calling the process broken. She accused fellow board members of failing to consider the rising costs landlords face when deciding.
Let's get specific. The water board, Mayor Mamdani's water board, is going to increase water rates 6% starting July 1st. Property taxes for rent-stabilized buildings past 5 years have doubled. Let's talk about.
And that's why I pointed Mamdani and I go, hold on. The very guy who told you I'm going to stabilize rents is now saying, actually, 47 days later, I'm going to raise your rents by raising property taxes. People aren't outraged enough.
That is why the former New York Democratic Assembly member who served alongside Mamdani says if his plan were to go through, it would be the nail in the coffin for this portion of the real estate market.
It's an attempt at affordability, but what he's going to achieve is insolvency. This is not a solution that actually addresses the costs that have been going up throughout the years, mostly due to government policy.
Zoran Mamdani campaigned on affordability, as did all of the Democrat Socialist of America. I'm going to make it cheaper for you. What happened with rents in New York City and Brooklyn and Manhattan? To the moon. Highest rents ever. Mamdani ripped over record high New York City rents, with critics pointing to policy they say is fueling the crisis. You got two major policies going on here. You got all the criminal illegals that New York City, as a sanctuary city, said, hey, come on in, not realizing they all had to live somewhere. And then number two, you just froze rents on 1 million units. Do you think a lot of apartment owners are going to say, you know what? Mamdani just froze rents on 1 million units. Let's go out and build some more because this is a great opportunity for us. No, they're going the other way. They're going to spend less on fix-up, and there's going to be fewer developers for sure. Let's get into it. Research links illegal immigration to rising rents, as New York City Comptroller Mark Levine urges making it easier to build homes. You know, I see this stuff, and even at the federal level, I see this stuff. There's no government policy that can get builders to build more homes. There isn't any. That is a misnomer. Because it requires individual. Real estate is local, right? It's local. It's you build it. I'm sitting in a house in Bellevue, Washington. It was built in Bellevue, Washington in 1962. Policy, yeah, it impacts things a little bit in D.C., what happens here. But for the most part, it's what are the building codes? What are the costs of a building permit? What are the costs in general to build in Bellevue, Washington? That's what's important. And so all this stuff about, let's make it easier to build homes. You're going to have to undo, you're going to have to reverse years, decades oftentimes, of terrible policy towards housing and builders and developers. And that's not going to happen overnight. And you're already in an area typically where it's super expensive, where things are just expensive. And all of that expense goes into building a house. So you got all these politicians going, oh, we've got a housing crisis. Yeah, no crap. You've had one since the Great Recession. And a lot of that had to do with the builders never really came back. And we've just had kind of one thing after another where builders just aren't building the number of homes that they need to. You know, Florida and Texas, they have about, 30% of the housing going on in the entire country. The rest of the country is like pulled back from building homes. And so, you know, home prices spiked heavily during the pandemic because it was open season at the border and those people got to live somewhere. All those criminal illegals that came into the United States, they got to live somewhere. Even the Federal Reserve has basically said, yeah, it impacted housing prices. New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani celebrates the Rent Guidelines Board's approval of a rent freeze impacting a significant portion of the city's rental stock. Property owner Humberto Lopez warns this decision will hurt landlords due to rising expenses and zero rent increases. He discusses the potential for buildings to deteriorate and broader economic consequences for New York City. You know, any city that brings a rent freeze on, it blows me away that people buy into this. Oh, just freeze rents. It's going to make them more affordable. You can't control the supply-demand curve. You can't control it. It is what it is. You got more people, then you need more housing. Can you build more housing? It's inelastic, right? The curve, the supply to demand curve, it's inelastic. Doesn't work. It's just it doesn't pull as it needs to. It's you know, by the time you actually get housing up, whoop, we missed it. Gonna have to do some price reductions. New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani is facing renewed criticism over housing affordability as rents in Manhattan and Brooklyn hit record highs. I love it. I love it. With conservative commentators arguing that immigration-driven demand is adding pressure to an already tight rental market that the mayor campaigned to ease. Same thing with Katie Wilson here in Seattle. Campaigned on affordability. And the only policies that these people can pull, the only levers that they can pull, actually have the opposite of impact, which is rent control. Further shrinks the demand for builders to put up multifamily housing, because that's basically what you got in New York City. There's no incentive. Hey, you want to build a product that they're going to control how much you can charge for rent? Not really. Oh, okay. Let's go over here to this market, and we can. Let's go to Houston. Let's go to Texas. Let's go to Florida. Let's go anywhere but New York City. Manhattan and Brooklyn's median rents reached $52.95 and $43.50. $5,300 for rent. But Mamdani said it was going to get cheaper. Katie Wilson said it's going to get cheaper in Seattle. She's going to campaign on that. And this is in June, according to analysis by the Corcoran Group, a real estate firm. They're the ones that came out with that. Interesting. Most recent available data shows roughly 38% of New York residents were born outside the U.S. You don't say. A fourth were built outside the U.S., and now there's not enough housing for everybody to go around, and housing prices have gone through rent has gone through the roof. Weird. Right? Weird. I don't get it. I feel like we literally live in the Twilight Zone. Remember that show? The great show when I was a kid. In black and white. We're now entering the Twilight Zone. I watched a lot of old reruns when I was a kid. I watched a lot of really old movies when I was a kid. That's why I think I identify with the generation ahead of me a lot more than I do with my own. Although my own, the 70s had some epic stuff. The 80s, it was kind of on its way out, right? Yeah, like Flock of Seagulls. You know what I mean? Just, although Billy Idol was pretty good. Now we're talking music with the rebel yell. About 40% of the rentals in the city are occupied by foreign-born individuals. And you don't say rent's high. Weird. Though the data does not distinguish between legal and illegal immigration status. Okay, it doesn't really matter. We know that these sanctuary cities, take for instance like Chicago, people got to live somewhere, right? And when you've already got a housing crisis you got a housing crisis throughout the country, and more so in blue states because they restrict your ability to build, and higher costs, regulation, massive overregulation. Hey, things aren't going well for the tenants. Let's just go ahead and we'll do a rent freeze. We're doing one here in Seattle. Just rent freeze. It's making it more affordable. Doesn't make it more affordable. It actually makes it more expensive. It's like all these policies that just simply don't work. Let's do them anyway because we think they might, even though they've been proven time and time again to not work. Just like socialism, you have to find places to put them. That put pressure on housing supply. Shortages create price increases. It's pretty simple. So, you've got upward pressure because people are, some wealthy people are leaving New York, but there's still a massive amount of demand for housing. I've never understood the whole New York City thing. It just seems like an utter rat race to me. You know what I mean? I want to go live in a cabin like the dude who shot all that footage by himself for like 40 years up in Alaska. That's what I want to do. I don't want to be on top of, have a bodega on every corner. And that's not my thing. I didn't grow up that way. I grew up in the burbs. I grew up in the woods. My early year. This whole never being able to see the sky or the sun because it's blocked by concrete doesn't really appeal to me. But I know a lot of people want to follow their dreams and go to New York City, go to Manhattan, live in Brooklyn. 2003 paper said pushes up rents and housing values in destination cities, immigration inflow, 1%, about 1% increase in rents and housing values. But most recently, and this is the one that we covered, Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, 1% increase in illegal immigrants working in a given area corresponded to a 1.4% increase in rental prices. Correlation, positive. I mean, you'd have to be an absolute dumbass to not think, all right, we've got a whole lot more people living here. We got to live somewhere. Yeah, things are going to get cheaper. I mean, where's your sense of reason? And yet, all of these politicians that were like, oh, F ICE, and we love our our immigrant neighbors, and you're like, okay, yeah, but they're causing your rent to absolutely skyrocket. So if you're okay with that, then all right, more power to you, because that's, yeah. Both papers reflect the author's findings, not represent official positions. Young Americans compete for housing with millions of foreign arrivals, said Representative Brandon Gill, Republican from Texas. Brandon Gill could be the next president of the United States at some point. If you don't follow Brandon Gill, you should. The guy is like 32 years old. He acts like he's 52 years old. He looks like he's maybe 40. And he just has this kind of deadpan ability to ask questions that are so absurd in these hearings. They're so absurd that you have to kind of laugh. And the people he's asking them of, typically libtards, they don't know what to make of him. It's the funniest thing. Follow Representative Brandon Gill on Facebook or whatever you do. I follow him on Instagram. I don't do Facebook. I think it's terrible, but that's just me. Between 2020 and 2023, the most recent years available, you got share of renter households with foreign-born New Yorkers, 37 to 40%. I mean, it's no surprise. It's no surprise that the numbers just keep going up, because how many thousands and thousands did Greg Abbott send from Texas? How many thousands did Florida send? They got to go somewhere. Remember all of those Abbott was sending them to Denver? Kind of West Coast-ish Denver. They got to live somewhere. It's stunning to me that these folks didn't figure on that. They were so hell-bent on the principle that we got to have the border wide open. And then when Abbott pulled that, what they call a stunt, which was absolutely genius. Hey, you want them to come across? No problem. We'll bus them to you. I mean, just sent bus after bus. And then let's go Brandon Johnson with his pointy haircut. He had a meltdown. He literally had an emotional breakdown. I don't know what to do. And prices have they bit Chicago in the butt, because you gotta have a place for these people to live. New York City Comptroller Mark Levine responded to news of rising rents on Sunday, recommended the city rezone neighborhoods to allow more home building, invest in affordable housing development, cut construction regulations to increase housing supply and bring down costs. All right, let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that. All right, rezone neighborhoods. You're already behind. All the rezoning in the world ain't going to cut it. Not going to happen. Not going to do anything. What it's going to do is just slow down your increase in rents. Not going to reduce it. It's going to slow it down because you're never going to get ahead. You're never going to build your way out of this one. To allow more home building. Invest in affordable housing development. What is that in New York City? What is that in Seattle? Affordable housing development? $500,000, $750,000 per unit? It's not affordable. It's just taxpayer subsidized housing. It makes everybody's taxes go up because you got to support this crap. Construction regulations. Really? What exactly what are you going to cut? When I read this, I'm like what? Throw out an example. What are you going to do? What are you going to cut that's really going to impact the bottom line of a building permit? Nothing. Everybody knows it. Nothing. It's just a bunch of psychobabble talk. So cut construction regulations to increase housing supply. The best you're going to do is build a little bit of supply. You're already toast. You're hosed. Just deal with it. We're going to have the highest rents ever, forever. Just got to deal with that. If we get something better than that, great. Big blue cities expect to have extremely high rents because all the policies that you're implementing, that's what they point to. And bring down costs. If you're in a blue city, your costs ain't coming down. They're going up. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out, folks. Not that hard to figure out. Conservative lawyer Mike Davis responded to Levine's recommendations by asking, how about deporting illegals? If we deport, what are we on schedule to deport? 1 million, a couple million, something like that. I mean, the overall big scheme population and number of housing units, it's not going to have an impact. I mean, it's going to have a little bit of an impact, but White House claims declining rental costs in the South and Southwest have been caused by deportations. No, that's an oversupply. You've got an oversupply because you've actually got states, Texas and Florida, that can blow and go when they build. Just, all right, we're going to cut up this land and we're going to do community after community after community. They're all going to look the same. And you actually can build there in an environment where you reduce the costs because they got to bring the prices down to sell them. It's not that hard. Just go to one of those states and take a look around. Hey, your price is going up, they're going down. They're coming down. All right. What's happening with your rents? Well, they're going down as well. It's not the deportation. Deportations could actually increase overall housing prices by harming the construction industry. That's a bunch of crap. They'll figure it out. Authors conceded that removing illegal immigrants could also cause housing demand to come down somewhat. So everybody kind of just like, it's that. Look at your basics. Look at how many housing units within your community are being built. Look at how many housing units they're pulling permits for. Look at that data. If you're in a blue state, blue city, blue county, guaranteed it's minimal. Guaranteed. Nobody wants to build there. It's too expensive. They're going elsewhere. They're going to where they can blow and go. Mamdani campaigned on addressing New York City's housing crisis by freezing increases for rent-stabilized tenants, building 200,000 new affordable homes. Good luck with that. Katie Wilson was going to build 500 homes for the homeless. She built 50. And this was before the World Cup. She built 50, maybe 75 by the end of, I think, this month, July. And they had, at the time of the World Cup, they had 7 people move in. Yeah. Yeah, that's building affordable homes. And expanding tenant protections. Mamdani campaigned on that. You know what? That is what you will see. Expanding tenant protections because that's about the only lever that they have to pull. They don't have the ability to reduce costs. They don't have the ability to increase housing by any measurable impact. Since taking office, he's successfully frozen rents and rent-stabilized leases, about 1 million of them, released a housing plan aimed at building and preserving 400,000 affordable homes, All right? If it's done by the government, it'll be terrible. And move to expand rental vouchers. All right, giving away more housing with rental vouchers. How's that going to make things affordable? Well, because a handful of people are going to get some discounted rent. Does that make housing affordable? No. No. Zoran Mamdani froze the rent and served himself some taxpayer-funded cake. Red State writer Bonchi reposted to X, referring to Mamdani celebrating the rent freeze with cake earlier this summer. Then rents hit an all-time high. Vacancy rates reached the highest since COVID. And he proposed a 20% raise for himself. Incredible stuff. We're going to see the same thing here. Same exact thing here in Seattle. Because we've got a mini Mamdani, don't we? We've got Katie Wilson. She campaigned on affordability. Everything about her platform was, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that, do this for the community. And you're just like, oh, this is psychobabble. This is nonsense. This is somebody who sat down and read I don't know, Karl Marx. I don't even know what a good source of here's how socialism should go. And then said, okay, we're going to take these concepts and here's what we're going to do to make things more affordable. And if you don't understand anything about business or economics or housing or real estate or reality for that matter, then you come up with a plan where you think capping rents is going to make things more affordable. Just reduces the supply. And then your rents go to the moon. Like Mamdani. And this is some fantastic stuff because it's the reality of socialism. Socialism works for those who don't. So those few folks who get the expanded rental vouchers, yeah, it'll help them out. One of the issues that I have is that folks figure housing is a human right. I disagree. It's a pay-to-play environment. I don't want to see a bunch of people go homeless. I don't want to see that. But there's enough social nets out there where that's not a thing. But you got so many whacked out drug addicts that just live wherever they want. Man, I was driving through Ballard with one of my a kid I know over in Seattle. We were going to get what did we get? We got a battery. I spent all Sunday working on his jet ski. A 1997 Sea-Doo Bombardier XP. And he's convinced that it's the starter. So we got the starter out, got a new starter in. Battery, doesn't have a battery. So we went and got a battery at West Marine, which is bankrupt. They had a massive store in Ballard. 2 employees for a massive store. Fortunately, it was really warm outside, so nobody was in there. But we went down this one road, and I posted it on my Instagram, Sean Reynolds 68, if you care. You probably don't. You're like, why aren't you posting on Facebook? Well, my posts do go there, so look for Sean Reynolds. But it was this block long. It was like Skid Row in LA. It just lined with tents. Seattle. Oh, it's great. I mean, just some great stuff there. Gnarly. Just taking up the entire sidewalk, spilling over into the street. Tent. Tire City block. You know what I mean? You're just like, oh, geez. Get me back to Bellevue. Critics argue rent freezes will lead to increased prices for everyone else and disincentivize property owners from doing more than the bare minimum to maintain units that they aren't being paid market rent to rent. What about the disincentivize? Is that a word? I think so. Probably. It's got too many consonants in it, though, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. Just too many. Too many of those. It creates no incentive for people to build new units. That's the deal. And if you have to pay them to subsidize, then you've basically just got more taxpayers' money going into a market that maybe it shouldn't. Mamdani's office did not respond to a request for comment. There's a shocker. He is too busy making New York City unaffordable. Look at how smug he is. Look at this. Just look at him. So smug. I always think, what's going on back there? Does he know? He knows, doesn't he? He knows that he can't do the things that he's promised. But he's somehow going to bamboozle the people of New York. And they're all going to go, oh, greatest mayor ever. Well, how's that record rent working for you? Record high New York City rents. Critics pointing to policy they say is fueling the crisis. There's multiple policies on this one. And there's multiple policies happening across the United States. But the big one is we just don't have enough supply of housing in most markets. Just don't. Haven't had for decades. Since the Great Recession. Forever. And particularly in Democrat-run big blue cities. Because they restrict your ability to build so hard, make everything so expensive. Wild stuff. All right, that's it for me. Enough Mamdani bashing, right? Let's get back to ripping on Katie Wilson about something. Thanks so much for being here. Love to have you subscribe. Hit that notification bell. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks again. Bye for now.